Thank you, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my respected colleagues, members of the House of Representatives, and specifically members of the Special Ad Hoc Committee on Naira Redesign, Cashless Policy, and Currency Swap. Like you may have known, it's a committee that has been set up by the House of Representatives upon a motion raised on the floor of the House of Representatives. And subsequently, the House gave the committee the mandate to continue to interface with the CBN fundamentally and with all other relevant agencies of government that have one thing or the other to do with this cashless policy and the change of the Naira note in the Nigerian economy. And on this note, when we now presented our first report to the House, bearing in mind that we were going for general election break, the mandate of the committee was further extended by the House, by the leave of the Speaker, that while the House is on break, that the committee remains as the only window to continue to interface with the CBN specifically, and obviously every other agency that has something to do with this cashless policy, and most especially the redesign of Naira note, which of course you can agree with me has become a very major, very serious problem in the country. So for those of us who are now holding brief, for the entire members of the House of Representatives and by extension the National Assembly, we must follow off every step. And it is on that note that we felt it is worthy and we deemed fit to seek for an appointment with the audience of Mr. President this morning. And thank God Mr. President obliged us an audience, which of course we met him. One important thing I must stress is that, yes, Mr. President had earlier on in the morning came up with a national broadcast, which he used to address Nigerians. And most of the issues and the outcries we wanted to really discuss with Mr. President is like he has addressed a lot of them in the course of his national broadcast this morning. But that notwithstanding, Mr. President allowed us opportunity to meet with him, believing the fact that this is a committee that represents the institution of the legislature, which of course is an arm of government standing on its own. And when you have issues to do with policies of government, when you have matters that border on the lives and livelihood of our people, then the best institution to speak for Nigerians is this institution, the National Assembly, and in this case, the House of Representatives. I want to commend Mr. President for the fact that despite his tight schedule and despite of the presentation he has made to the nation today, he agreed to meet with us. And one more important thing that excited each and every one of us was that when we met Mr. President was already on ground with all the relevant agencies that have to do with this currency redesign and Naira swap. The CBN governor was there at the instance of Mr. President. Of course, we never wrote to the CBN governor to join us here. The representatives of the Ministry of Finance was there. The SGF was also represented there. The Inspector General of Police was also there. I'm trying to say that I, as the leader of this committee, and by extension, a representation of the House of Representatives, are truly impressed by the outing we have had with Mr. President, because everyone that matters as far as this policy is concerned was on ground to interface with this committee. And of course, Mr. President gave his own take. We also gave him our own take. We represent the people. And vice versa, we also represent Mr. President as partisan actors, political actors. We represent Mr. President in our various constituencies. Of course, Mr. President is under moral and statutory obligations to listen to briefings from head of government and agencies. And I so also believe that Mr. President has same obligation to listen to his ambassadors, those of us, especially those of us that belong to the ruling party. And indeed, even those who are in the opposition are ambassadors of the government in their local areas, in the ghettos, in the streets. So we came to say to Mr. President that in spite of the presentation he made today, the national broadcast, in spite of the fact that, yes, he has ordered the CBN to make some amendments, to take some new steps to ameliorate the hardships this policy has already entrenched into our economy which is impacting very negatively on the lives and livelihood of Nigerians whom we are representing in the National Assembly, we told Mr. President clearly that we commend him for that, but it is not yet Uhuru. It is not yet Uhuru because agreed, for instance, that central bank has been directed to make sure they make money available. This new Naira note should be made available into the economy for the village people, for the SMEs, the traders, petty market traders, women in the markets to have access to. But how do we ensure that Mr. President's directive is actually being carried on the ground, on the field? That cannot be guaranteed. So we thank God Mr. President addressed us and addressed the CBN governor once again to our face. And we also got the opportunity to tell the governor of the central bank that yes, you must go on ground to implement the directive of Mr. President as it is, as contained in the letters of his speech, not as a matter of perception, not as a matter of professional guide. You cannot be more professional than the feelings of the actual players in the marketplace, in the economy. No matter what policy you want to bring, no matter how good or brilliant that policy is, as long as it brings about hardships, pressure, stress in the system, then that policy must be deemed to be otherwise. And it is on this note that we told Mr. President that we will continue to interface with these relevant agencies, especially the CBN governor. Of course, while we are discharging our constitutional right to oversight every institution of government, we must ensure that the directive of Mr. President is carried out to the latter. And failure to do that, we will also employ every instrumentality of the law, legislative instrumentality, to ensure that presidential orders are being abided by and laws of the land are also respected. I want to acknowledge in Mr. President's speech that he has come to be on the same page with us as regards the interpretation of Section 20, subsection 3 of the CBN Act, where it says very clearly that if the banknote is being redesigned, and there is what you call old and new Naira, the old currency must be redeemable at time of presentations, either at the central bank or at the commercial banks. This is contained in Mr. President's speech, which otherwise, in the speech of the CBN governor, he otherwise said, oh, that can only be redeemable at the central bank. What the Constitution says, that money must be redeemable on presentations to the banks, whether central bank, commercial banks, or whichever, even if it's microfinance bank. After all, would you expect a local trader in Jibia or a local trader in Badagry to come and have access to the central bank? Do individuals have private accounts in the central bank? Central bank is not an individual account operator. So certainly policies are made, and when such policies are now seen to be quite impracticable, or they are seen to be very inimical to the development of the nation or the economy in terms of its fiscal management or fiscal administration, those of us in the House of Representatives, as representatives of the people, we have the statutory mandate to blow the whistle. And that is what we are doing. We have blown this whistle in the National Assembly on the floor of the House, and we have come this far to blow same whistle to Mr. President, while thanking him for the new steps he has taken to cushion the effect of this unfortunate policy. Of course, I took special apology to some of my members here who are members of other parties. But I, as a member of the ruling party, I told Mr. President, with due respect, that the policy in itself is a policy that is against the ruling party, my party, because it's a government policy. Muhammadu Buhari's government of the APC, and Nigerians at time of elections are now looking at my government coming up with an unpopular policy. Unpopular because it does not matter even if the policy may be seen to be professionally good. Some of us see a lot of things that is good about the policy, but the question, as far as we are concerned, those of us in the ruling party, is that why now? Why? 30, 40 days to election, you come up with a popular that is not widely accepted by Nigerians, and whether you like it or not, that will be seen as an APC program and policy of government. So those of us in the APC are not happy about it. And I believe some of my colleagues who are even in the other parties will not see these things as a good policy. Not good because the time is absolutely wrong. But I want to say without any fear of contradiction, I share in principle, I also share in the perception of Mr. President, I share in the perception of the CBN governor that there is need to entrench this policy so as to be able to address some security problems. There is need for this policy so that Nigeria can also be seen to be working on same page with international economies. Cashless policy, yes, cashless. But why do you want us to be cashless at a time when we are facing a general election, when our security apparatus to work and protect the election process will require cash at hand to service their logistics? Why would you say and insist on cashlessness when even INEC is expressing a lot of fears that without cash in hard copy? Cash in hard copy is needed to carry on activities by the Electoral Commission. So like I said, no one of us is against the policy in terms of its principle. Nobody is against the policy in terms of its desirability to make Nigerian economy, of course, a worldwide nature of kind of economy. But the implications, far-reaching implications, and some of the unintended consequences, negative consequences brought about by this policy is what we must rise to fight in the interest of Nigerian people and in the interest of our electoral process. As far as the committee is concerned, vis-a-vis to our engagement with Mr. President and officials of the central bank, I think it was a fruitful discussion. Fruitful because the president put it clear before the CBN governor to effect the directives, presidential directives given by Mr. President. And those of us who now exercise our statutory powers to oversight the agencies of government will take it from there. We'll go and oversight the CBN as a statutory body to oversight government agencies to ensure that presidential orders as contained in his speech are being carried away to the latter. But as to whether Mr. President took any legal position for or against the judgment of the Supreme Court, that I think you need to sort it out with Garba Shehu, because I don't speak for Mr. President.
Yes. It's an effect from today, from his directives. It's from today.
What? The directives given by Mr. President are outright presidential orders, and they should be carried out immediately with immediate alacrity. No more, no less. With immediate effect. And whoever fails or derails in the implementation of such directives, then the House of Representatives will use the powers around it to ensure that such directives are being implemented to the latter in the light of the law. I have said it ab initio that our engagement with Mr. President today was very brilliant, very exciting, and Mr. President has done what we expected of him. In the first place, he has invited these relevant security agencies to be part of our meeting. He has invited the CBN governor to be also there. And we also have to say, without any fear of contradiction, that the broadcast today by Mr. President has addressed a lot of things that we wanted to even discuss with him positively. Why we insisted that it's not yet Uhuru is for us to see to the forces of government really implementation the orders of Mr. President to the latter. A lot has been said by Mr. President, and we agree with him. We are on the same page. But how would that be carried out? How do you have cash, new Naira note, or the so-called 200 Naira note available to the remotest part of Nigeria, to Palgore in my federal constituency, or to Saminaka in Lere federal constituency, or even to the Metropolitan Council? All we are saying is that the president has done well in the steps he has taken in addressing the nation, but more should be done, like the Oliver Twist would say. More should be done. And doing more in this regard simply means overseeing what the central bank will do. Instructions are here. Implementations could be on the other side. And we will help to now follow it up. We will help Mr. President to follow it up while exercising our oversight powers to ensure that what Mr. President has ordered within the ambit of the law is being implemented without let or hindrance. Vote buying question, like you said. I want to tell you without any equivocality that I, the Doguwa you know, who has won the election 7 times, and that I belong to the ruling APC proudly. No one of us in the APC, and I believe even in other parties, is out to buy votes. But you must also take into cognizance that there is a clear-cut provision in the Electoral Act which provides for the amount of money needed for every political office holder to take during campaign to use. A member of the House of Representatives is expected by law to have not more than 70 million naira to conduct his elections and whatever, logistics and other things. 70 million naira cash by law. Yes. A presidential candidate, for instance, needs to have how much? About 5 billion or 1 billion? 1 billion for presidential candidates. At least the law has provided for us the amount of money we need to oversee our election process. You need to pay your agents in the villages where you don't have ATM machines, in the villages where you don't have POS, in the villages where absolutely you don't have this new Naira. So this is money that I require, that the law has permitted me to have 70 million Naira as logistics for my election funding. I need to have this 70 million Naira in hard copy. Yes. I don't have it.
That's the law.
That is the position of the law. Is that not so?
Yeah, let's stand up.
And as I speak to you, I don't have it. Which means if this policy continues this way, if the central bank fails to make available this amount of this money we need to fund our elections, definitely every candidate, no matter what party he belongs to, will be put at disadvantage. And don't forget the point I made as a partisan member, that the policy in itself is a policy that is apparently against the ruling APC, because Nigerians that are not happy will look at it as a policy of the government of the APC. This has placed us at disadvantage already. I cannot speak as a person here. I'm seated here in the capacity of being the chairman of this committee and to discuss only this matter under my jurisdiction. If you want to pick up that question, join me in the office. Maybe I can give you answers as a leader of the House of Representatives in that regard. But don't also forget, we have the what do you call the PIB, which already is in force. So virtually most of the parastatals or agencies that handle supply of fuel, PMS or whatever, are now private entities. Free market interplay is now allowed in the petroleum the substream sector. So you cannot just take on us now to be those to regulate. It's all about demand and supply, and maybe the fiscal elements of that sector of the society that will determine availability of otherwise of such product. When we came with our demands, I said it clearly that most of the demands we had wanted to put on the table of Mr. President were already answered by his morning breakfast, by his morning broadcast. And that was why we kept on saying we thank and commend Mr. President for the action and steps he has taken, very proactive and positive actions he has taken in the course of his address. I can't repeat demands that have already been answered. For instance, let me give you one instance. For instance, the position of the laws, which says clearly in section 20 sub 3, that the old Naira note must continue to be redeemable on presentation at any bank. Mr. President protected and took that position. Good. Mr. President, we wanted to perhaps urge Mr. President to say, oh, please allow the old Naira note to operate in circulation in pari passu with the new Naira note. He had already said, okay, we are now allowing 200 Naira note to continue as legal tender. 50% of that request is answered. So all I'm saying, Mr. President has done very well in terms of responding to the yearnings and aspirations and, of course, the expectations of the Nigerian people. And that will go further to resolve some of these hardships and suffering and the stress we are going through in our petty economy system. So when these things are now answered, we now said, okay, Mr. President, like the Oliver Twist would say, please, more should be done. More should be done. I won't be surprised if, as a result of my consultation with Mr. President now, I won't be surprised if Mr. President now come to take another decision. Okay, allow 500 Naira also to continue. So what we are doing is that consultation, and it continues. This is what we call in legislative term as progress, work in progress. We have had a lot of progress, and we will continue to consult to ensure that progress is being made by the day, until when we get to the right page. Oh, thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen.